Living in small spaces doesn't have to be as hard as you might think. That's why today I want to share with you my 5 simple rules for small homes. Rule 1. Make it multifunctional. As a society, we've been taught that the more you have, the happier you'll be. We've been taught that more is more, but when living in a small space, this couldn't be further from the truth. In the words popularised by world-renowned modernist architect Mies van der Rohe, less is more. This essentially means the less something is complicated, the more it can be valued or appreciated. Because micro apartments and tiny houses are so restricted with space, it's easy for them to become overcrowded and chaotic. This is due to multiple pieces of furniture being needed for different tasks, which quickly eats up space and makes it feel small and restrictive. In order to avoid this, I've found one of the best ways to choose the things that go into your home is to make sure that every single item you have has 2 functions. For instance, when you sit, you need to sit on something, so why not make it storage? However, to take this idea further, you can also try to purchase items that move or fold in order to make them disappear or increase their functionality. For example, coffee tables that become dining tables and desks that fold into walls. Walls are often a part of the house that can be easily overlooked, so making use of these, as well as doors, is a handy way to make sure that these don't just function as partitions, but also as a place to hang or display items. Rule 2. Organise your storage. Before moving into a small apartment, I was free to keep my possessions however I wanted. I had cupboards with dead batteries, cables, old instruction manuals and equipment. Over time, this ended up as a mountain of junk that I didn't really need, which was living rent-free in a space that I was paying for. Looking back, the reason it ended up like this was because I was really just lazy and I didn't want to face the decision of throwing things out and organising things properly. What I've realised though is when you have a self-made system in place where everything you own has a home, and I literally mean everything, this problem tends to take care of itself. What I found useful is firstly being intentional about what I own and then being intentional about where it goes. So, for example, stationery and office supplies go on one shelf and leads and tools go under the sofa. What's great about having a system in place is that things become pleasant to look at and easy to access, and you immediately realise when you're hoarding things you don't really need. When we're unsure about something that needs throwing out, but then on the other hand also think we might need, we put it into a transition box to consider at a later date, and if we don't use it after a month or so, we throw it out or donate it. Clearly, I'm not perfect, and things tend to get a little messy around here from time to time. This is especially so when living with another person in a small space. But because being tidy 100% of the time is somewhat impossible, we found it helps to have little spaces such as valet trays and letter holders to keep a hold of the things that end up cluttering our space frequently, such as papers, receipts, and stationery. Rule 3. Keep it clean. So this rule really goes without saying. Nobody wants to live in a messy, smelly, and dusty apartment, but the reality is that cleaning often gets put off for longer than it should, and in our case, sometimes much longer than it should. As you're maximising the use of a small space and using it often, it gets dirty fast. With all the traffic and continual wear, dust accumulates, dirt gets tracked around, and the air gets stale pretty fast. One of the things we've found to be most helpful is just to make it as easy for ourselves as possible. Because who really enjoys cleaning? Not me. In an ideal world, we'd love to have a cordless Dyson vacuum cleaner. But for now, we've got an outlet in a location where our tiny and cheap little vacuum cleaner can reach the entire house. Ideally, removing any obstacles to cleaning, such as plugging things in and having to wind up cords, definitely helps the most in motivating you into action. But having to use only one outlet is working out okay for us. So we try to do this, as well as wipe down the surfaces from dust and bacteria at least once a week. Because the space is small, smells don't have to travel far. When we first moved in, we found that if we left our bin unchanged in the kitchen for just a little while, the whole apartment would start to smell of bad food. As we don't really have much waste, we rarely need to empty it, and having to empty it regularly because of food smells became really impractical. So what we did is get ourselves a small food bin with a charcoal filter, so anything that's wet or cooking related stays out of our main bin, which stops our entire apartment from smelling like a landfill. This one really goes without saying as well, but bedding should be changed every 2 weeks minimum, regardless of where you live. And when you live in a small space, even more frequently. As bedding takes up such a large area, changing it can often freshen up the entire apartment. Rule 4. Prioritise your air quality. This rule is really very similar to Rule 3, as it's along the lines of being clean. But in a small space, you have a lot less air to circulate around your home. So smells, dust and damp don't really have places to go. This is important as damp air can cause mold, which can lead to respiratory problems, and can also stop fabrics from drying, which is not only really frustrating, but it's kind of disgusting. If you live in a warmer country than England, this might be less of a problem for you, as you can just crack your windows wide open to let all of that damp air escape. But here, it's grey, cold and rains a lot, and most homes don't have ventilation systems. So to avoid your expensive hot air escaping too much, but still get some circulation going, you can crack open your trickle vents, which will at least allow some air to get in. But if you're taking hot showers, cooking and drying clothes, this often doesn't really do an adequate job. We're lucky enough to have a space for a washing machine in our apartment, which is under our kitchen counter. We considered replacing this with a washer-dryer, but we know that dryers are pretty bad for the environment and pretty bad on your clothes, so we hang our laundry up to dry on an airer and this neat little retractable washing line for large items like bedding and towels. We found this minimal, neat contraption on Amazon for £16, and it's been amazing as it doesn't take up any space on the floor like a traditional airer, which are pretty useless as well at hanging bedding. With all of these wet items sitting in the space and with the heating cranked up, things get pretty tropical and humid in here, and our clothes still don't dry properly. So what we found to be an absolute game changer is a dehumidifier. These dry your clothes way better in the winter than even cracking open all of your windows and blasting on your central heating, and take up barely any space. So we just stick ours on as soon as we put out any laundry, which is usually while we're out at work or overnight while we're sleeping, and by the time we come back to it, it's bone dry. Another thing we've grown to love is our air purifier. Now, our kitchen has an extractor fan, but this often doesn't fully get rid of cooking smells. Also, we live in London, so the air quality here isn't great, and I'm a sufferer of hay fever during the summer. So an air purifier does a great job of filtering out food smells, pollution and pollen, and also provides great white noise whilst we're sleeping. There are also dehumidifiers you can get with these built in, so you don't have to buy two separate appliances. Rule 5. Lighting. So this last rule is regarding lighting. Now, this might be down to personal preference, but I, along with most people, love natural daylight. I feel like it often boosts my mood and keeps me more alert. Because of this, I'll do everything I can to maximize daylight when I design for a space. And this is especially true in our own home. There are two things I do for this. Firstly, using white for walls and furniture does a great job of bouncing light around a room and actually makes a space feel bigger, which is a plus if you only have 300 square feet. Now, you don't necessarily have to choose white for your walls. You could choose pastel colours or anything as long as it's not too dark. Also, I'm a massive advocate of blackout roller blinds in white. This is because not only do they perfectly do the job of providing privacy, but you can also project onto them with projectors, saving you the space of having a TV. Additionally, instead of curtains or shutters, they can open fully and get out of the way to expose the entirety of the window, without blocking the path of light, to let in as much of that beautiful English sunshine as possible. Also, for interior lighting after dark, I like to vary the light sources throughout our space. We haven't done a great job at this so far, but using lamps, dimmers and uplighting can really transform the way a room feels. So I'd encourage you to experiment with this if you have the space or the know-how. And this is something we're going to be looking into in more detail this year. One area of my life I've been less successful with in setting rules and boundaries is with my time. That's why this week I've been learning how to be more intentional about how I spend it. all with the help of Skillshare. As a minimalist, I fundamentally believe in owning less and consuming less to create more time to do the things you love, like learning, and that's why I partnered with Skillshare to sponsor this video. Skillshare is an online learning community that offers thousands of inspiring classes to people who are interested in topics ranging from photography and design to business and productivity. I'm going through a course by Greg McKeown, author of New York Times bestseller Essentialism, on how to accomplish more with less. In this course, he talks about the benefits of identifying things that are non-essential that you're over-investing in, and gives practical advice on how to execute essentialism in your daily life. To find out more, the first 500 of my subscribers to click the link in the description will get a 2-month free trial of premium membership, so you can explore your creativity and make 2020 a year of learning new skills and deepening existing passions. This is completely free to try out, and an annual subscription works out to be less than $10 a month. By signing up, you'll not only be supporting my channel, but may actually learn something new.